formal part of our AGM.
Okay. Well, I'm happy. Thank you, John. Morning, everybody. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, obviously welcome Jason, but also Susan to the Society. Penny's been a stalwart of the Society for some years, but nice to see a bit more diversity in the room. So welcome to you especially. So, as part of the Society's constitution, all positions are declared vacant at the end of the Society's financial year, and then the positions on the committee, both as the actual officers of the committee, of the Society, and ordinary members of the committee are up for election. As has been the case for a few years, the number of nominations for committee positions equals the number of positions. So we're not actually going to have a live election. You have to rely on what happens down in Macquarie Street and Canberra. If you enjoy elections, you'll get your jollies there, but not here at the Society, at least not this year. So, but just before I announce the nominations, and those people will be by default elected, can I just say thank you to the Society for your continuing a relationship with Bartier Perry and inviting us here and up to the Hunter. It's certainly a relationship that we value highly. We're very happy to impart what knowledge we have, but it's very important for us as well. And it's a real bonus for our practice to hear from you people who are on the ground in the industry and giving us that education back as to what's going on, because that assists us to assist you and assist our other clients as well. So thank you very much for the continuing relationship both here and obviously up in the Hunter as well. I don't think we've actually made it in person to the Hunter as yet, but we might, kind of a New Year's resolution, we'll get up there to have a beer at the club at some stage this year. So, all right, so on to the nominations. So we have committee positions of, as in officers of President, Vice President, Treasurer and Secretary, and then we have ordinary members. So of the nominations for ordinary members for this coming year, Graham Thorpe, Mark Williamson, Andrew Stewart, David Roberts, Eamon Donnellan, Chris Bulmer and Mason Asdari. So all of those persons have nominated. They fill the positions. There aren't more people nominated than there are positions. So I declare all of those persons elected as ordinary members of the committee for the coming year. Congratulations, gentlemen. And putting his hand up for secretary for the coming year, again, is Nick Ferrara. Well done, Nick. And the man who wears more than one hat, two hats, putting his hand up for both Treasurer and Vice President of the Society for another year, Scott Harper. Well done, Scott. And El Presidente, John Cuniff, for another year. Well done. You'll have seen from the events that have been run this year, from the education that's provided, from, as you will have heard in John's report, the backroom stuff that goes on that you don't necessarily see, that isn't obvious, and indeed from Scott's presentation in relation to the finances and how healthy they are. What a good job this committee has done and will continue to do. So thank you to the whole committee, and thank you for putting your hands up again for the coming year. Nice. And I should say that, so we have the committee, but there are also subcommittees, and we have 5 subcommittees of the committee. So the Hunter, as you will have heard, Andrew Stewart's putting his hand up for the 3rd year to be the chairperson for the Hunter region. There's a membership committee of Graham Thorpe and Nick. You hear from them at our meetings in terms of new members. There's the Strata Inspection Committee, which is John, Scott and Eamon. Sponsorship Committee, which is Mark Williamson and Chris Bulmer, and the Marketing and Website person. One-man committee, Mason Asdari. So, you know, in addition to their normal committee duties, they are also working on these subcommittees. So, a very hard-working bunch. Thanks, John.
Can't let them run away because do you want a break or do you want to do your legal?
Oh, if people are happy to hear me continue droning on, I'm happy to do my legal thing. That's okay. All right. Fantastic. Okie dokie. Oops. There we go. Now I've got to move this on, I assume. I can't quite see that.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So this topic comes courtesy of Eamon, who sent me an email. He'd had some queries from some members about using AS 4349.0. Why is there a query about that? And sorry, I'll just pause the acknowledgement of country. AS 43490 has been withdrawn. It was withdrawn in 2023. So really the question is, can you still use it? What's its relevance? So that's what I'm going to talk about, why it's been withdrawn, what's the difference between 43490 and the current standards, and can you still use it? So the answers to this are, we were withdrawn in 2023 because it's a general building inspection standard. It doesn't apply to any particular type of building. It doesn't apply to a particular type of inspection. So what's happened is Standards Australia has decided, well, we need to look at task-specific standards because obviously inspecting a residential building is different to inspecting a commercial building or an industrial building. So we're just going to focus on inspection standards that relate to particular types of building, and so we are withdrawing 43490. So you've still got 4349.1 and .2, etc. They continue, but just because it's withdrawn doesn't mean it doesn't exist anymore. It's still there, you can still find it, and as we'll see, if you want to still reference what your task is according to 43490, you can still do it. Although there are some considerations that you need to which you need to have regard if you are going to use it. So if you want to contract with a client to inspect to the standard required by AS 43490, you can still do that. There's nothing stopping you do that, and that becomes your contractual benchmark in terms of what your obligation to your client is. So still out there, there's no great warnings on it or anything like that. It doesn't say it's redundant, it's still there. You can use it, and just because you use 43490 doesn't mean that your report is defective or impaired in some way. So withdrawal means it's out there still. There are other standards you can use, but it's still there. It's not wiped out totally. So what's the difference? As I explained, AS 43490 is a general standard for the inspection of buildings. It's not specific to residential pre-purchase, industrial or otherwise. That means that it can be a problem, or you really need to be cautious about using it for other types of inspections, and particularly residential inspections. 434.1 is specific to residential inspections, inspections of residential buildings. And one of the important parts about that, and big differences between point 0 and point 1, is point 1 is continually monitored by Standards Australia. It's updated, it's maintained. And what are they maintaining it to? They're maintaining it to what is regarded as the current industry practice, current building practice, current inspection practice. Whereas 4349.0 will not be updated. It's frozen in time. So to the extent that current industry practice moves on, 4349.1 is the standard that needs to be used or should be used. So, can still be used, can still be used as a contractual benchmark. It's not necessarily defective, but you need to explain why it remains an appropriate benchmark, particularly if you're in a court, or a tribunal, and you've done your inspection or your report based on 43490 rather than the more current, for residential buildings, 0.1. So you have to justify why that has been used as opposed to 0.1. You may well be able to do that if you can show that practice hasn't moved on from what's in 4349.0, then that's fine. But you can expect to be quizzed on it. Again, obviously there's a difference between going and doing a pre-purchase inspection where you have a contract with your client and you say, I'm going to do it to 4349.0. You're not required to do anything more than that. If, however, you're giving evidence in doing an expert report and you're referring to 4349.0, then that might be open to question by the tribunal. There's an exception. If you got on your web, you got a nice shiny website and says you're the best inspector in New South Wales, and you use all the up-to-date equipment and you provide reports that people can rely on, and you're well educated, etc. Your client may say, well, hang on, you're saying you inspected to 4349.0. When I contracted with you, I assumed that what you were giving me was employing the latest practices, methods and standards. But I now find out that the one you used is one that hasn't been updated since 2023, and most other people are using 4349.1. That was a misrepresentation. If I'd known, I would have gone elsewhere to someone who's saying that they are going to be obliged to use the latest standard and not one that's been withdrawn. So there can be a real issue there. And if you don't even have that contractual backing, then there's an even bigger risk because then what you've done is going to be looked at very, very closely. So what about your insurance? Read your insurance policy is the best advice I can give you. If there is a specific term in your insurance policy that says we're not going to cover you unless you're using and contracting to use the most current up-to-date standard, then you've got a problem. If it doesn't say that though, you should be fine, because usually insurance policies want you to work to and want you to contract to the lowest standard, not the highest standard, because the higher standard you contract to, the more scope there is for the client to claim that you haven't met that higher standard, which makes it harder for the insurance company to defend a claim. If you've only contracted with your client to work to a lower standard, then that's good for the insurance company, because it's easier for the insurance company to defend the claim. So again, read your insurance policy, because they might want disclosures that they might say, oh, if there's anything that we should know about in taking on the risk of giving you a policy, you need to disclose it now. Now, if you're working to the lower standard and you're not including that in your contract, or if you're working to the lower standard, you're keeping it in your contract, but there's a risk that a client might say, well, I didn't know you were working to the withdrawn standard and not the current standard. That might give rise to a claim. That might be something that you want to disclose at the very least to your insurance company, that's your usual contractual position. So just be careful about that. So the takeaways, check your PI wording, make sure in your contract you name the standard you're applying so that it's crystal clear. I'd recommend use 4349.1 for residential inspections and be ready to explain why AS 4349.0 was an appropriate benchmark for you to use in any particular inspection that you've done. Questions? Neil?
Will there come a time where it won't be able to be used in any legal settings? Like, is that a planned thing that's going to happen for 4349.0?
There's no particular plan for it. It's frozen in time. So it's been withdrawn as what they call a current standard, meaning that it's not a standard that's going to be updated. So it's frozen in time. Again, you can still use it, particularly in terms of your contract with your client when you're doing your pre-purchase inspection. But if you're in court, then you can expect some questions as to, well, why did you think that was an appropriate standard to which to inspect? You can justify it, if you're doing an expert report, then, and particularly if your report is defending the inspector, then if you're saying, oh well, it was he did everything that was in 43490, then unless there's actually a contractual term that says that that's all he had to do, then the other side particularly, and the tribunal is going to say, well, why are you only holding him to that standard? Surely he should be held to 4349.1, because that's the current standard. So there's no...
As time moves on, it loses relevance.
Well, exactly. It's all about being maintained. So there's no hard and fast, okay, after 3 years you can't refer to that standard at all. You can, but you take on a risk in doing it.
David, I've actually run the insurer on this and had a chat with them.
Yep, good.
The thing is, they're stating, and it's one of the main insurers.
Yep.
They are saying keep using it until there is an alternative. Secondly, when you're undertaking work within the scope of AS 4349.0, you ensure that you keep your report within it and don't comment out of it.
Yes.
Stay within that structure.
Yes.
Don't expand into AS 4349.1 when you're in AS 4349.0, because if you jump out of it, you're overextending yourself. So keep it in that standard.
Yeah.
Very important, and that's
exactly.
defined contractually, because
Yes.
you've got a pre-engagement agreement with every client. If any inspectors here are getting any pre-engagement agreement signed up prior to a job, you're not meeting the standard anyway, regardless of which standard you're using. So the point is, the insurer is saying keep using it, it's still relevant, and for general inspections.
Yes, for general. But if there is a current standard, then you should use the current standard.
You can't use AS 4349.0 to undertake a compliance inspection, because it actually states it's not a compliance report. So if you're making comments in your report saying, oh, this does not meet the NCC because of blah, 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 you've already outstretched yourself, you've breached the standard.
Yes.
You've got to keep it within it, and you can't comment on compliance in an AS 4349.0. They're not compliance reports, they all state it. They're not certificates of compliance. So you can't mention that it's compliant with this or compliant with that.
Pending safety issue.
Safety issues, yes. You could say it's a risk or a safety issue, but not compliance. No compliance wording can be used with AS 4349.0 or 0.1. It doesn't exist. You read the standard, they're not compliance reports. So if someone is using it, reassess it, because you're breaching the standard.
Yeah. You need, again, devil's in the detail. You need to be very careful about what you're agreeing to do. And as you say, Joseph, don't work outside what you've agreed to do. Don't exceed your scope. You're just opening yourself up.
David,
Graham.
I was on the committee of the suite, the AS43 suite, and it basically we had a meeting and basically that particular standard got withdrawn, we all agreed on that.
Mhm.
The other 3 standards were within that suite, were going to be discussed and talked about. The wheels fell off. Basically Levi Robson, the guy who was chairing it all, left Australian Standards, and I'm trying to pick up the pieces on where that's up to all now. But basically, yeah, I'll hopefully have an update in the future, but at this stage, that one got withdrawn. I still currently use it myself for commercial inspection at the moment. And my insurance company's written on my policy that I still use that and they're fine with that. But as Joe said, you've just got to be sensible and as your list of recommendations there, I couldn't agree with, you know, that's excellent. But yeah, just it can be still used quite okay.
Yep, just be careful. Yeah. Other questions? No? Okay.
Joe?
Joke. Well, look, I'm reminded cold winter, we're coming out of winter, lots of people have Christmas in July, functions, so thinking about Christmas and Christmas cards and other kinds of cards. So I'm reminded of a card that, it's a very long introduction, sorry about that. I'm reminded of a card that I came across the other day, which initially I thought was very nice. And it said, whenever I'm sad, you're there. Whenever I'm having problems, you're always there. Whenever my life seems out of control, you're always there. Let's face it, you're bad luck.